For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sanel Dlamini. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Sattner joins me to discuss how do we address xenophobia. Welcome, Professor.
Hi.
You have written a lot on xenophobia in the country, but is it not an international phenomenon, and can we hope to stop it?
Yeah, you know, xenophobia has got a long history. I mean, the word barbarian started hundreds of years ago, identifying one group of peoples as being barbarians as opposed to others. And you see in ancient Rome and Greece and others where some are citizens, some are not. So it's not a new thing. And in the world at large, in recent years, there has been a lot of very, very serious cases of exclusion of people who have wanted to come into Europe by boat from parts of Africa. Very often trouble spots where Europe has had a lot to do with them being trouble spots, like in Libya, where they got rid of Gaddafi, but they created a complete disintegrating state. So you've got a lot of people who've been crossing there and states that have not wanted to admit them. This has also increased as a result of the 9/11 attacks in Washington. And after that, there was a very high level of antagonism in United States at an official level and to some extent public sentiment towards Muslims, what people call Islamophobia. And of course, the election of Donald Trump has also given a lot of impetus to xenophobia, with one of his first acts being to stop Muslims from 6 states from entering the United States. Now, and the talk of building a wall between Mexico and the United States of America. What is interesting about these things is that it's not an uncontested discourse. There's xenophobia, Islamophobia, a number of other forms of antagonism, and in South Africa's case, violence against people from other states, but it's not uncontested. You have had in situations in Europe where people did not want to admit foreigners into certain countries, and others opened their homes to them, helped them to settle, things like this. When they were not allowed into one part of Europe, certain other parts, surprisingly, Germany admitted a lot of people, a lot more people than some other states like Hungary and a few others. What I think is also important is that the terrorism that is being perpetrated in the name of Islam creates a sort of vicious cycle whereby some people from ISIS, Islamic State, go and bomb in Paris and certain other places, and all other people who look Muslim or have a Muslim-sounding name are then victimized. So that you've got the cycle. There is undoubtedly terrorism perpetrated by jihadists and certain other people. But Islam as a religion is not a violent religion like Christianity. Christianity has had its crusades, it's had all sorts of people under apartheid who did all sorts of things in the name of Christianity, but that is not Christianity per se. So you have this internationalization of xenophobia in history, and at this present moment you have a situation where what is happening in South Africa is a variant of what has been happening in other parts of the world, in Europe and in America, although the killings and the lootings have not happened, as far as I'm aware, to anything like the extent as happens in South Africa. But I think that we've got to understand that even if these things are happening, that doesn't mean that they must happen in South Africa, and that we cannot in good faith address them and remedy them. You need a leadership that doesn't give the signal that this is okay. I mentioned in my article that I heard from a restaurant that Home Affairs was going around and asking, telling them that 60% of the employees have got to be South Africans. Now, there's no law that says that. So you have a situation where people get the idea that foreigners must get out, and they then take the law into their own hands as well, in a number of different ways. So I think the fact that it's an international phenomenon doesn't mean it can't be addressed here or elsewhere. And the movement in America is symbolic of the fact that there are a lot of people who are outraged at what Trump has done, including what he did towards Muslim people. One court set it aside, the acting attorney general resigned, and so forth. So there's a counter wave against these things. What we have to do is build on that counter wave.
And our former President Thabo Mbeki also referred to many of the people coming from countries that hosted South Africa during the struggle. Why did you not refer to this?
If someone else asked me about this, I have referred to this in the past. I just was focused. You know, when you write an article and you decide that you want to deal with a particular notion, like for me in the article, I wanted to say that we need to understand that being a human being and having the rights of a human being is a universal phenomenon. It doesn't apply just to South Africans. It applies to everyone who is within our midst. The Freedom Charter says South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white. And I think that notion of universality is what I want to focus on. Other reason I didn't deal with that is I don't think we must say that the only reason that make it seem that the reason why we must host people from other states of Africa is because we must reciprocate what they have done. We must do it because it is the way you treat a human being, to treat them as human beings. Now, however, having said that, it is particularly shameful that South Africa is treating people from the rest of Africa the way they do. And if you look at the struggle, Thabo Mbeki was himself in Nigeria a lot of the time. Ghana was in some ways in the forefront of the diplomatic struggle against apartheid. But the frontline states, Swaziland, Lesotho, Botswana, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Angola, these states paid a heavy price for hosting freedom fighters, not just from the ANC, but also from PAC and black consciousness and other traditions at various points. In fact, in Nigeria, Tsietsi Mashinini also was in Nigeria. But in the frontline states, they paid a heavy price because in retaliation for them hosting the ANC mainly, South African Defence Force bombed these states, and citizens of these states were killed, so that they paid with their blood in order to ensure that we are free today. And I think we owe them a debt. There's also the diplomatic front, the solidarity shown towards our struggle. One must remember that at certain stages, the struggle inside the country was at a very low ebb. But in 1974, the United Nations took a decision that they would exclude the South African government, the apartheid government, from the United Nations General Assembly on the basis that it did not represent the people of South Africa, and they recognized ANC and PAC instead. Now that was very, very important, because at that time struggle inside the country was very subdued, but the solidarity movement led by the African states was spearheading the isolation of the apartheid regime, and the exclusion from the United Nations General Assembly was an important victory and an assertion of the fact that they may have called themselves the government, but they did not represent the people of South Africa. So I think it should be a source of shame to people in this country that we treat people from those countries who supported us the way that is happening in this period.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Sattner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about how do we address xenophobia.